The scent of rain hung heavy in the air as Nathan Eastwood checked the straps on his wagon one last time, his calloused fingers testing each knot with practiced efficiency. Thunder rumbled across the Montana Territory sky, and he knew from years of mountain living that he had maybe 20 minutes before the heavens opened up. His muscles flexed beneath his worn shirt as he worked, broad shoulders moving with an economy of motion that came from a lifetime in the wilderness. Long dark hair, tied back with a leather thong, brushed against his collar as he bent to examine the wagon wheel. That was when he saw her. A small boot, muddy and worn, stuck out from beneath his wagon bed. Nathan froze, every sense suddenly alert. His hand moved instinctively toward the rifle propped against the wagon seat, but he stopped himself. The boot belonged to someone small, and it had not moved in the several seconds he had been watching. He crouched down, peering into the shadows beneath the wagon. A young woman lay curled there, fast asleep despite the approaching storm. Her dress was torn and dirty, her face smudged with trail dust. Dark blonde hair fell across her face in tangled waves. She could not have been more than 20 years old, maybe younger, and she looked like she had been through hell. Nathan straightened and glanced at the darkening sky. The first fat raindrops were already beginning to fall. He could not, in good conscience, leave anyone out here in what was about to become a deluge. The mountains showed no mercy to the unprepared, and this woman looked about as unprepared as they came. "Miss," he said, keeping his voice gentle but firm. "Miss, you need to wake up." She did not stir. He tried again, louder this time. "Miss, there is a storm coming." Still nothing. Nathan sighed and reached under the wagon, gently touching her shoulder. The moment his fingers made contact, her eyes flew open and she scrambled backward with a startled cry, hitting her head on the wagon axle. She cried out in pain, one hand flying to her head while the other fumbled in the folds of her dress. "Easy now," Nathan said, raising both hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not going to hurt you. My name is Nathan Eastwood, and this is my wagon you have been sleeping under." The woman stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. In the fading light, he could see they were a striking hazel color, green and gold mixed together like a forest stream. She pressed herself against the far wagon wheel, as far from him as she could get while still remaining under the shelter. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I will move." "I am sorry. I was just so tired." "That is not what I am concerned about right now," Nathan said, speaking slowly and calmly as he would to a spooked horse. "What concerns me is that there is about to be a serious storm, and you are going to get soaked through if you stay under this wagon. The ground will turn to mud within minutes, and you will be lying in it." As if to emphasize his point, the rain began to fall harder, drumming against the wagon bed above them. "I will be fine," she said, but he could hear the tremor in her voice. "No, you will not," Nathan said firmly. He gestured toward the dense forest behind them. "I have a cabin about a quarter-mile up that trail. It has a roof, a fireplace, and walls. You would be welcome to shelter there until the storm passes." Suspicion flashed across her face. "Why would you offer that?" "Because I am not an animal," Nathan replied. "And because my mother raised me better than to leave a woman to drown in a rainstorm when I have the means to help." She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing her options. Finally, she seemed to reach some conclusion because she nodded slowly. "All right," she said. "Thank you." Nathan backed away from the wagon to give her space to crawl out. She emerged slowly, wincing as she moved. Now that he could see her fully, he realized she was in worse shape than he had initially thought. Her dress was not just dirty but torn in several places, and she moved like someone who had been walking for days without proper rest. She was slender, almost too thin, with delicate features that might have been pretty if they were not drawn with exhaustion. The rain was coming down in earnest now, and Nathan quickly grabbed his rifle and a pack from the wagon seat. "This way," he said, starting toward the trail. "Stay close. The path is clear enough, but it gets slippery in the rain." She followed him without protest, though he could hear her struggling to keep up. He slowed his pace, adjusting for her shorter legs and obvious fatigue. The rain plastered his shirt to his back and ran down his face, but he was used to it. Mountain weather was unpredictable at best, and he had learned long ago to accept whatever nature threw at him. The cabin appeared through the trees, solid and reassuring. Nathan had built it himself 3 years ago when he had decided to settle in this area. It was not fancy, but it was well constructed, with thick log walls and a sturdy roof that did not leak. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, which meant the fire he had banked that morning was still going. He pushed open the door and stepped aside to let her enter first. She hesitated on the threshold, taking in the single room with cautious eyes. Nathan could see her cataloging everything. The fireplace along one wall with its cooking implements, the rough-hewn table and 2 chairs, the bed in the corner covered with furs, the shelves lined with supplies and equipment. "It is not much," Nathan said, closing the door against the storm, "but it is dry." The woman turned to look at him, really look at him for the first time. He saw her gaze travel over his face, taking in his weathered features and the beard he kept trimmed but never fully shaved. Her eyes widened slightly as they moved down to his shoulders and chest, and he realized that in his rain-soaked shirt, every muscle was clearly defined. He was not a vain man, but he knew he was built like an ox. Years of hauling timber, hunting game, and surviving in the mountains had given him a powerful physique. "It is perfect," she said softly, and he thought he saw tears gathering in her eyes. "Thank you, truly." Nathan moved to the fireplace and began building up the fire. "You should get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death. I have some spare shirts in that trunk there. They will be too big, but they will be dry." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I could not impose." "You already are, so you might as well do it properly," Nathan said, not unkindly. He stood and moved toward the door. "I need to go back and move the wagon under better cover anyway. The fire will warm the room quickly. Help yourself to anything you need." Before she could protest, he was back out in the rain, pulling the door shut behind him. The truth was, he did need to move the wagon, but he also wanted to give her privacy and space. The woman was clearly running from something or someone, and she needed time to adjust to her new surroundings without feeling pressured. The storm had fully arrived by the time he reached the wagon, rain coming down in sheets that reduced visibility to a few feet. Nathan worked quickly, unhitching his 2 horses and leading them to the small lean-to shelter he had built near the cabin. He rubbed them down and made sure they had feed and water, then wrestled the wagon into position where it would be protected from the worst of the weather. By the time he made it back to the cabin, he was soaked to the skin and shivering. He paused outside the door, listening. When he heard nothing alarming, he knocked. "Miss, I am coming in." He opened the door to find her sitting at the table, wrapped in one of his large flannel shirts that hung to her knees. Her hair was still wet, but had been combed through with her fingers, and some of the dirt had been wiped from her face. She had found his water basin and cloth. The transformation was remarkable. She was pretty, he realized, with fine bones and those unusual eyes that seemed to change color in the firelight. "Better?" he asked, shrugging out of his wet coat. She nodded, clutching the shirt closed at her throat. "Much, thank you." Nathan grabbed a dry shirt from the trunk and turned his back to her, as he changed, aware of her presence even though he could not see her. When he was in dry clothes, He hung his wet things near the fire and began preparing a simple meal from his supplies: salt pork, beans, and cornbread left over from breakfast. "I am Hannah," she said suddenly. "Hannah Anderson." He glanced over his shoulder at her. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Anderson, though I wish it were under better circumstances." "Hannah is fine," she said. "After everything, I think we can skip the formalities." "Hannah it is, then." He stirred the beans and added some bacon fat for flavor. "You must be hungry." "I am," she admitted. "I have not eaten in 2 days." Nathan stiffened but did not turn around. 2 days. That explained the weakness he had seen in her. "Well, this will be ready in a few minutes. It is nothing fancy. It smells like heaven." They fell into silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the drumming of rain on the roof. Nathan found himself hyper-aware of her presence, of the way she shifted in her chair, of her breathing. It had been a long time since he had shared this space with anyone, especially a woman. He had built this cabin as a refuge from the world, a place where he could live on his own terms without judgment or expectation. Having someone here felt strange, but not unpleasant. When the food was ready, he served them both generous portions. Hannah ate like she was starving, which she probably was, but she tried to maintain some semblance of manners. Nathan found himself impressed by that. Whatever hardships she had faced, she had not lost her dignity. "You are probably wondering what I was doing under your wagon," Hannah said after she had eaten enough to take the edge off her hunger. "The thought crossed my mind," Nathan admitted. "But you do not owe me your story if you do not want to tell it." She looked down at her plate. "I ran away from my uncle in Virginia City. He wanted me to marry a man 3 times my age, a man who already buried 2 wives. I refused, and my uncle locked me in my room. I climbed out the window 3 nights ago and started walking. I have been hiding and moving whenever I could. When I saw your wagon this morning, it looked like good shelter, and I was so tired I could barely stand." Nathan processed this information slowly. Virginia City was over 50 miles from here, and she had walked most of it. The determination that must have taken was staggering. "This uncle of yours," Nathan said carefully, "is he likely to come looking for you?" "I do not know," Hannah said honestly. "He might, or he might be glad to be rid of me now that I have shamed him by running away." "And the man he wanted you to marry, Samuel Greer, he owns a mining operation. He is wealthy and influential." She met Nathan's eyes. "He is also cruel. His first wife died of mysterious injuries. The second one lasted only 6 months before she drank poison." Nathan felt anger stirring in his chest. "And your uncle still wanted to give you to him?" "My uncle cares more about business connections than my well-being," Hannah said bitterly. "My parents died of cholera when I was 16, and I went to live with him because I had nowhere else to go. For 2 years, he treated me like an unpaid servant. Then he decided I was old enough to be useful to him in other ways." "You are 18. 20, Hannah corrected. "I turned 20 last month. That was when Uncle Richard decided it was past time I married, and Greer had approached him with an offer." 20. Only 5 years younger than himself. Nathan found himself relieved by that for reasons he did not want to examine too closely. "You can stay here tonight," Nathan said. "Tomorrow, when the storm has passed, we can figure out what to do next." Hannah looked at him with something like hope in her eyes. "You do not have to help me any more than you already have." "Maybe not," Nathan agreed, "but I am going to anyway." The storm raged through the night, wind howling around the cabin walls like a living thing. Nathan gave Hannah his bed and made himself a pallet near the fire, despite her protests. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the storm and the soft sound of her breathing from across the room. His life had been simple and solitary, exactly as he had wanted it after his years as a trapper and hunter. But as he stared at the fire, he found himself wondering if simplicity was all he really wanted anymore. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. Nathan rose early, as was his habit, and quietly stoked the fire before slipping outside. The air was crisp and cool, filled with the scent of wet pine and fresh earth. He checked on the horses and surveyed the area, looking for any signs that someone might have followed Hannah's trail. He found nothing suspicious, but that did not mean much. The rain would have washed away most tracks, and if anyone was looking for her, they would likely start their search along the main roads, not up in these mountains. When he returned to the cabin, Hannah was awake, sitting at the table looking uncertain. She had braided her hair, and in the morning light, he could see that she was actually quite beautiful. The thought made him uncomfortable, and he busied himself with preparing breakfast. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Better than I have in weeks," Hannah admitted. "That bed is very comfortable. It should be. I made it myself." Nathan set a pan on the fire and began cooking eggs from his small chicken coop. "I have been thinking about your situation." Hannah tensed. "And?" "The way I see it, you have a few options. I could take you to the nearest town, help you find work and a place to stay. Or I could take you further, maybe to Jamestown or even Helena, somewhere your uncle is less likely to look. Or—" He paused, not sure if he should continue. "Or—" Hannah prompted. "Or you could stay here for a while, just until you get your strength back and figure out what you want to do." The words came out in a rush, and Nathan found himself holding his breath as he waited for her response. Hannah stared at him. "Stay here. With you." "I know how it sounds," Nathan said quickly, "but this cabin is remote. No one comes up here except me. You would be safe while you recovered. I would not." He struggled for the right words. "I would not expect anything from you. You would have your privacy, and I would sleep by the fire. Once you were ready, I would help you get wherever you wanted to go." "Why would you do that for me?" Hannah asked quietly. "You do not know me." Nathan turned the eggs, considering his answer. "When I was younger, my sister found herself in a similar situation. A man was forcing his attentions on her, and she had nowhere to turn. I was out in the wilderness trapping, and I did not know until I came home and found that she had married him to avoid further scandal. He made her life miserable for 3 years before she finally died in childbirth." Hannah's hand went to her mouth. "I am so sorry." "It was a long time ago," Nathan said, though the pain of it still lived in his chest. "But I swore that if I ever had the chance to help a woman in a similar situation, I would do it. So that is what I am offering. No strings, no expectations. Just a safe place to rest." Hannah was quiet for a long time. Nathan served the eggs and sat down across from her, giving her space to think. He could see emotions playing across her face: hope, fear, uncertainty, and something else he could not quite identify. "I accept," she finally said. "But only if you let me earn my keep. I can cook and clean. I can mend clothes and tend a garden if you have one. I will not be a burden." "You would not be a burden regardless," Nathan said. "But if it makes you feel better, then yes, you can help around the cabin." A smile, small but genuine, crossed Hannah's face. It transformed her features, making her look younger and lighter. Nathan felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. They spent the morning in careful politeness, working out an arrangement. Nathan would take the wagon down to trade some furs and pick up supplies, giving Hannah time alone in the cabin to settle in. He showed her where everything was stored, how to work the fireplace, and how to bar the door from the inside. "I will be back before dark," he promised as he prepared to leave. "If anyone comes while I am gone, you hide. There is a root cellar under that trap door. No one knows it is there unless they are looking for it." Hannah nodded, looking both nervous and determined. "I will be fine. And Nathan." "Thank you For everything. He tipped his hat to her and climbed up onto the wagon seat. As he drove away, he could feel her eyes on his back, and he found himself already looking forward to returning. The trip to Jamestown took most of the day. Nathan traded his furs for a good price and carefully selected supplies with Hannah in mind. He bought fabric for a new dress, good sturdy boots in what he hoped was her size, and extra food staples. He also purchased a proper bed frame and mattress, telling himself it was just practical but knowing deep down that he wanted her to be comfortable. Old Pete, the general store owner, gave him a curious look as he loaded everything onto the wagon. "That is a lot of domestic supplies for a man living alone in the mountains, Nathan." "Maybe I am tired of living like a hermit," Nathan replied, keeping his tone light. "Or maybe you have finally found yourself some company," Pete said with a knowing grin. "About time, if you ask me. A man your age should have a wife and family." Nathan did not respond, just finished loading the wagon and headed back up the mountain. But Pete's words stuck with him. He was 25 years old, and he had been alone for 3 years now. Before that, he had spent 5 years trapping in the high country, living rough and rarely seeing another soul. He had told himself he preferred it that way, that he was done with people and their complications. But having Hannah in his cabin, even for just one day, had reminded him of what he was missing. The sun was setting as he pulled up to the cabin. Smoke curled from the chimney, and warm light glowed in the window. For the first time since he had built this place, it looked like a home instead of just a shelter. Hannah met him at the door, and he was struck by how right she looked standing there. She had cleaned the cabin from top to bottom, and something delicious was cooking over the fire. "You made it back," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I said I would." Nathan began unloading the wagon. "I hope you do not mind, but I picked up a few things for you." He brought in the parcels, and Hannah's eyes widened as she saw what he had bought. "Nathan, this is too much. I cannot accept all this." "You can and you will," he said firmly. "Consider it payment for the work you are going to do around here. Fair trade." She looked like she wanted to argue, but then she touched the fabric with gentle fingers, and he saw longing in her face. "It has been so long since I had anything new," she whispered. "Then it is about time you did," Nathan said. He brought in the bed frame next, and Hannah's mouth dropped open. "You bought a bed." "I bought myself a bed," Nathan corrected. "You are taking the good one." "I built that one for comfort, not portability. This one is easier to move around." It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it, but Hannah did not argue. Instead, she helped him set up the new bed by the fire. They worked together easily, and Nathan found himself enjoying the simple domesticity of it. Over dinner, Hannah told him more about her life before she ran away. She had been educated by her mother, who had been a school teacher. She loved reading and had dreams of one day teaching herself. Her uncle had dismissed such notions as foolish and had forbidden her to read anything except the Bible. "What about you?" Hannah asked. "How did you end up here, alone on this mountain?" Nathan hesitated. He was not used to talking about himself. But something about Hannah made him want to open up. "I grew up in Missouri," he began. "My father was a farmer and I was expected to follow in his footsteps. But I never took to farming. I wanted adventure, wanted to see the mountains I had heard so much about. When I was 18, I ran away to become a trapper. I spent 5 years in the high country, mostly alone. I learned to track and hunt, learned which plants were safe to eat and which would kill you. I learned to read the weather and the animals. I became good at it." He paused, poking at the fire with a stick. "But it was a hard life, lonely. After 5 years, I had enough money saved to buy some land and build this cabin. I thought maybe I could find a middle ground between the wilderness and civilization. I trap and hunt for income, but I have a home to come back to. It has worked well enough for the past 3 years. But you are still alone, Hannah observed quietly. I was, Nathan said, meeting her eyes. But maybe that is changing. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Hannah's cheeks flushed pink and she looked away first. I should clean up, she said, standing quickly. Nathan let her go, but he watched her move around the cabin and he felt something settling in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to contentment. The days began to blend into a comfortable routine. Nathan would rise before dawn and tend to the animals and his trap lines, then return to find Hannah had prepared breakfast. They would eat together, talking about small things, learning each other's rhythms. Then Nathan would work on various projects around the property while Hannah tended to the cabin and the garden patch she had started. In the evenings, they would share dinner and sit by the fire. Nathan had given Hannah free access to his small collection of books, and her face had lit up like Christmas morning. She would read aloud sometimes, her voice soft and melodic in the firelight, while Nathan worked on repairing equipment or carving small wooden items to sell in town. A week passed, then two. Nathan found himself thinking about Hannah at odd moments during the day, wondering what she was doing, looking forward to seeing her smile when he came home. She was filling up the empty spaces in his life that he had not even realized were there. Hannah, for her part, seemed to be blossoming. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something brighter. She had made herself 2 dresses from the fabric he had bought, and she wore her hair in different styles that she must have remembered from her life before. She hummed while she worked, and sometimes Nathan would catch her laughing at something, and the sound would make his heart skip. But they maintained a careful distance. Nathan slept by the fire, and Hannah took the main bed. They did not touch beyond the occasional accidental brush of hands. The attraction between them was undeniable, crackling in the air like summer lightning, but neither of them acted on it. Nathan told himself it was because she was vulnerable, that she needed time to heal before she could make clear decisions about her future. But deep down, he knew he was also protecting himself. He had never felt this way about anyone before, this all-consuming awareness, this need to see her happy and safe. It terrified him. 3 weeks after Hannah arrived, Nathan came back from checking his traps to find her outside, working in the garden. She had tied her hair back with a ribbon and wore one of her new dresses. The afternoon sun caught in her hair, turning it gold, and Nathan had to stop and catch his breath. She looked up and saw him watching. A smile crossed her face, warm and genuine. "You are back early." "Finished sooner than I expected," Nathan said, dismounting. "Good day." "Very good. I think the carrots are almost ready to harvest." She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over to him. "Nathan, can I ask you something? Anything?" "Why have you never married?" The question caught him off guard. He tied his horse to the post and considered his answer carefully. "I suppose I never met anyone who made me want to give up my freedom. Mountain life is hard and not many women would choose it, and I never felt right asking someone to sacrifice for me." "What if someone wanted to make that choice?" Hannah asked softly. "What if someone saw this life, saw you, and wanted to stay?" Nathan's heart began to pound. "Hannah." "I am not saying anything," she said quickly. "I am just asking, hypothetically." But it was not hypothetical, and they both knew it. The air between them felt charged, electric. Nathan took a step closer to her, and she did not back away. "If someone wanted to stay," Nathan said slowly, "I would want to make sure it was for the right reasons. Not because they felt obligated or because they were afraid, but because they truly wanted to be here." "And if they did truly want to be here?" Hannah whispered. Nathan reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch sent shivers through both of them. Then I would do everything in my power to make sure they never regretted it. Hannah leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. Nathan, I think I am falling in love with you. The words hit him like a physical blow. He had known, on some level, that his feelings for her had grown beyond simple protection or attraction. But hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified and exhilarated him. I know it is too soon, Hannah continued, opening her eyes to look at him. I know I should be more careful, that I should not trust so easily. But being here with you, it feels right. It feels like home in a way nothing else ever has. Nathan cupped her face in his large, calloused hands, marveling at how delicate she felt. It is not too soon, he said roughly, because I feel it too. I have felt it almost from the moment I saw you under that wagon. You scared me to death, Hannah Anderson, because I thought I was done with feeling anything for anyone. And then you came along and turned everything upside down. Is that a bad thing? Hannah asked, her lips curving into a small smile. No, Nathan said. It is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He lowered his head slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not pull away. Instead, she rose on her toes to meet him halfway. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle and careful but quickly deepened into something more passionate. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close against his chest, and she melted into him with a soft sigh. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I want you to stay, he said. Not as a guest or someone I am helping. I want you to stay as mine, my wife, my partner, my everything. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Yes, she said. Yes, I want that too. I want to stay with you forever. Nathan kissed her again, and this time there was a promise in it, a commitment to a future they would build together. But reality intruded a moment later when Nathan pulled back, his expression troubled. Your uncle, he said. And that man, Greer, we need to make sure you are legally free of them. I do not want them showing up here with some claim on you. Hannah's smile faded. You are right. But how? We go to the territorial judge in Helena, Nathan said. You tell your story, and we make sure it is recorded that you are of age and choosing your own path. Then we get married legally and proper, so there is no question. Do you think it will work? It has to, Nathan said firmly. Because I am not letting you go, Hannah. Not to your uncle, not to Greer, not to anyone. They left 2 days later, Nathan driving the wagon while Hannah sat beside him. The trip to Helena would take several days, but Nathan made sure they were well supplied. He also made sure his rifle was loaded and within easy reach. He did not expect trouble, but he was prepared for it. As they traveled, they talked about everything and nothing. Nathan told her stories from his trapping days, about close calls with bears and blizzards, about the breathtaking beauty of the high peaks in summer. Hannah told him about her childhood, about her parents and the happy life they had lived before illness took them. They also talked about the future. What crops they would plant, improvements they could make to the cabin, the life they would build together. Nathan found himself sharing dreams he had never spoken aloud before, and Hannah listened with shining eyes. At night, they camped under the stars. Nathan made a fire and laid out their bedrolls with careful distance between them. They were not married yet, and he wanted to do this right. But they would sit close together, Hannah's head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and talk until the fire burned low. On the third night, as they sat watching the flames, Hannah said, "Tell me about your sister, if it is not too painful." Nathan was quiet for a moment. Her name was Sarah, he said finally. She was 2 years younger than me, and she was the best person I have ever known, kind and generous to a fault. When I left to go trapping, she begged me not to go. She said she would need me, but I did not listen. I was 18 and stupid and thought I knew everything. Hannah squeezed his hand encouragingly. While I was gone, a man named Thomas Wright started courting her. He was older, established, and my parents approved, but he was also possessive and cruel. Sarah tried to break it off, but he would not accept it. He started spreading rumors about her, saying she had been improper with him. In a small town, that kind of talk could ruin a woman, so Sarah married him to stop the gossip. Nathan's voice had gone rough with old anger. I came home for the wedding and I could see she was not happy, but she swore she was fine, that she was doing what was best. I wanted to believe her, so I did. I went back to the mountains and left her with him. It was not your fault, Hannah said softly. Maybe not, but I still carry it. 3 years later, I got word that she had died in childbirth. The baby died too. When I went home for the funeral, I saw the truth in her friends' faces. They told me about the bruises Sarah would hide, the way she had become a shadow of herself. Thomas had beaten her regularly, and the pregnancy had been hard because she was not strong enough to carry it, but she had been too ashamed to ask for help. "Oh, Nathan," Hannah whispered. "I confronted Thomas at the funeral. We fought, and I nearly killed him. They ran me out of town before I could finish the job. That is when I decided to come to Montana, to build a life far away from that place and those memories. I told myself I would never let anything like that happen again if I could help it." Hannah turned to face him fully, taking both of his hands in hers. "Your sister would be glad you found me. She would be glad you helped me." "I hope so," Nathan said. "But more than that, I am glad, because if I had not been in exactly that spot at exactly that time, I would have never met you." "I think we were meant to find each other," Hannah said. "I have to believe that all the bad things that happened were leading me to you." Nathan pulled her close, holding her tight against his chest. "Then I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret finding me." They reached Helena 4 days after leaving the cabin. The territorial capital was bustling with activity, miners and merchants and families all going about their business. Nathan led them straight to the courthouse, determined to settle Hannah's legal situation before anything else. Judge William Morrison was a stern man in his 50s, but his eyes were kind as he listened to Hannah's story. She told him everything, holding nothing back. Nathan sat beside her, providing silent support, his hand holding hers. When she finished, Judge Morrison sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Miss Anderson, you are 20 years old, correct?" "Yes, sir." "Then, by the laws of this territory, you are of legal age to make your own decisions regarding marriage and residence. Your uncle has no legal claim on you, and Samuel Greer certainly does not. However, I would like to make this official." He pulled out some papers and began writing. "I am going to issue a statement declaring that you are a free woman of legal age, with full rights to choose your own path. I will also note that any attempts by your uncle or Mr. Greer to coerce or force you into marriage would be considered criminal. This document can be filed with the territorial records and will serve as protection should anyone come looking for you." Relief flooded through Hannah's face. "Thank you, Judge Morrison. Thank you so much." "You are welcome, my dear." He looked at Nathan. "And you, Mr. Eastwood, what are your intentions toward Miss Anderson?" "I intend to marry her," Nathan said firmly, "with her permission as soon as possible." "Well, that works out nicely," Judge Morrison said with a small smile, "because I am also authorized to perform marriages. Would you like to take care of that today?" Hannah looked at Nathan with wide eyes. "Really, right now, if you want to," Nathan said. "Or we can wait, have a proper ceremony with guests and planning. Whatever you want, Hannah." Hannah thought for only a moment before shaking her head. "I do not need a big ceremony, I just need you. Let us do it now." Judge Morrison called in 2 clerks to serve as witnesses, and within the hour, Nathan and Hannah were married. The ceremony was simple, just the required vows and the exchange of a simple gold band that Nathan had purchased from a jeweler on the way to the courthouse. But as Nathan slipped the ring onto Hannah's finger and kissed her as his wife, it felt more meaningful than any elaborate ceremony could have been. They filed all the paperwork, making sure everything was legal and recorded. Then they walked out of the courthouse as husband and wife. "I cannot believe we just did that," Hannah said, staring at the ring on her finger. "Regrets?" Nathan asked, though his heart clenched at the possibility. "None," Hannah said firmly, rising up to kiss him. "Not a single one." They spent the night at the hotel in Helena, the first time they would truly be alone as husband and wife. Nathan carried her over the threshold of their room, and Hannah laughed, the sound bright and joyful. "You do not have to do that," she said. "Yes, I do," Nathan replied, setting her down gently. "You are my wife now. I am going to do everything properly." Hannah's laughter faded, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "Nathan, I have to tell you something." He cupped her face, concerned by her serious tone. "What is it?" "I have never." She blushed and looked away. "My uncle kept me isolated and I ran away before anything happened with Greer. I do not know what to do, what to expect." Understanding dawned, and Nathan felt his heart swell with tenderness. "Then we will figure it out together," he said gently. "There is no rush, Hannah. We have the rest of our lives." "I want to," Hannah said, meeting his eyes again. "I want to be your wife in every way. I am just nervous." "So am I," Nathan admitted. "You think I do this every day?" That made her smile. "I suppose not." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and felt her relax against him. They took their time, discovering each other with gentle hands and whispered words. Nathan was patient and careful, putting her comfort above everything else. And when they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Two pieces of a puzzle finally finding their fit. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, Hannah's head resting on Nathan's broad chest while his arms encircled her. The room was dark except for the moonlight filtering through the curtains. "I love you," Hannah whispered. "I love you too," Nathan replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "More than I thought possible. Do you think anyone will come looking for me?" Nathan tightened his arms around her. "I do not know, but if they do, they will have to go through me, and I promise you, Hannah, I will protect you with my last breath." "I believe you," Hannah said, "but I hope it does not come to that. So do I." They left Helena the next morning, heading back to the cabin that was now truly their home. The journey back felt different, lighter somehow. They were no longer two separate people finding their way together. They were a unit, a team, a family. When they finally arrived at the cabin, Nathan swept Hannah into his arms again, carrying her inside despite her laughing protests. "Welcome home, Mrs. Eastwood," he said, setting her down. Hannah looked around at the cabin with new eyes. "It really is home now, is not it?" "It is," Nathan agreed. "Our home." They settled into married life with surprising ease. The routines they had established before remained, but now they were flavored with new intimacy. Hannah would greet Nathan with a kiss when he came in from his work. He would wrap his arms around her from behind while she cooked, resting his chin on her head. At night, they would fall asleep wrapped around each other, and Nathan would wake to find her still there, real and solid and his. Summer turned to fall, painting the mountains in gold and red. Hannah's garden flourished, and she spent long days preserving food for the winter. Nathan hunted and fished, making sure they would have plenty of meat. They worked together to gather firewood and make repairs to the cabin before the snow came. One evening in late September, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Hannah said, "Nathan, I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "I would like to start teaching again. Not in a formal school, but there are families scattered through these mountains. Some of them probably have children who need education. I could offer lessons, maybe a few times a week. Nathan considered this. It would mean a lot of travel for them, coming all the way up here. Or I could go to them, Hannah said. You could take me in the wagon when you go to check your trap lines or trade. I could teach while you do your business. Then we could come home together. He could see the excitement in her eyes, the passion that had been missing when she talked about her future before. If that is what you want to do, then we will make it happen, Nathan said. But not until after winter. The weather is too unpredictable right now. Hannah smiled and kissed him. Thank you for understanding. Teaching is important to me. I know it is, Nathan said, and I want you to be happy. I am happy, Hannah said. Happier than I ever thought I could be. Winter came early that year, with the first snow falling in mid-October. Nathan and Hannah were well prepared, and they settled in for the long, cold months ahead. Being snowed in might have driven some couples apart, but Nathan and Hannah found it brought them closer together. They would spend hours talking by the fire, sharing stories and dreams. Hannah taught Nathan to read better, and he taught her about tracking and wilderness survival. They played checkers and cards. They made love and laughed and built a life together within the walls of their small cabin. In February, Hannah woke up feeling ill. She could not keep breakfast down, and she was exhausted all the time. Nathan was worried until Hannah put the pieces together. Nathan, she said one morning, her eyes wide, I think I might be pregnant. Nathan felt like his heart stopped. Pregnant? I cannot be certain without seeing a doctor, but all the signs are there. She looked nervous. How do you feel about that? Nathan crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. How do I feel? Hannah, I feel like the luckiest man alive. She sagged against him with relief. You are not upset. Upset? Why would I be upset about having a child with the woman I love? I do not know, Hannah admitted. I was just nervous about how you would react. Nathan pulled back to look at her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Hannah, you and any children we have are the greatest blessings I could ever receive. I will admit I am terrified because I do not know the first thing about being a father, but I am also more excited than I can express. Tears streamed down Hannah's face, but she was smiling. We are going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby, Nathan repeated, the reality of it sinking in. He insisted on taking her to the doctor in Jamestown as soon as the weather permitted, which turned out to be 3 weeks later. The doctor confirmed what they already suspected. Hannah was about 3 months pregnant and due in late summer. The doctor also gave Nathan a stern talking to about making sure Hannah got proper rest and nutrition. Nathan took this very seriously, perhaps too seriously, as Hannah had to eventually tell him to stop hovering. I am pregnant, not made of glass, she said with exasperation after Nathan had insisted she sit down while he made dinner for the 3rd night in a row. I know that, Nathan said. But you are carrying our child. I want to make sure you are both healthy. Hannah's expression softened. We will be fine. Women have been having babies for thousands of years, but I appreciate that you care. I more than care, Nathan said, kneeling beside her chair and placing his hand on her still flat stomach. You are my whole world, Hannah, both of you. As spring arrived and Hannah's pregnancy became more obvious, Nathan found himself preparing for the baby with the same intensity he had once applied to surviving in the wilderness. He built a cradle from smooth pine and fashioned small clothes from soft materials. He made sure they had extra supplies stored away, and that Hannah had everything she might need. Hannah bloomed with pregnancy, growing more beautiful as her body changed. She would rest her hands on her swelling belly and talk to the baby, telling it about the life they were building, about the father who was already so devoted. One warm May evening, As they sat outside watching the sunset, Hannah took Nathan's hand and placed it on her stomach. "Wait," she whispered. "Do you feel that?" Nathan felt a small flutter beneath his palm and his eyes widened. "Is that—" "The baby," Hannah confirmed, her face glowing. "That is our baby moving." Nathan felt tears sting his eyes for the first time since he was a boy. The reality of the tiny life growing inside Hannah, a life they had created together, overwhelmed him. "Hello, little one," he whispered to her belly. "I am your father, and I promise I will always protect you." Hannah ran her fingers through his hair. "You are going to be such a good father." "I hope so," Nathan said. "I want to be the kind of father mine never was, present and involved and loving." "You will be," Hannah assured him. As Hannah's due date approached in August, Nathan became increasingly anxious. He had arranged for a midwife from Jamestown to come stay with them for a few weeks, a practical woman named Mrs. Fletcher, who had delivered hundreds of babies. But even with professional help lined up, Nathan was terrified something would go wrong. "Women die in childbirth," he said one night, voicing his deepest fear. "What if something happens to you?" Hannah took his face in her hands. "Nothing is going to happen to me. I am healthy and strong, and Mrs. Fletcher knows what she is doing. You need to have faith." "I am trying," Nathan said. "But the thought of losing you—" "You are not going to lose me," Hannah said firmly. "I have too much to live for. I have you, and I have this baby, and I have the life we are building together. I am not going anywhere." Nathan held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, and tried to believe her words. Mrs. Fletcher arrived in mid-August, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who immediately took charge of preparing for the birth. She approved of the cabin's cleanliness and the supplies Nathan had gathered. She also reassured him that Hannah was in excellent condition for childbirth. "Your wife is healthy as a horse," Mrs. Fletcher told Nathan. "I do not anticipate any problems, but I will be here just in case." Labor began on a warm August night, 3 weeks after Mrs. Fletcher's arrival. Hannah woke Nathan with a quiet gasp, her hand on her belly. "It is time," she said. Nathan was on his feet instantly, his heart racing. "Are you sure?" "Very sure," Hannah said, breathing through another contraction. The next 12 hours were the longest of Nathan's life. Mrs. Fletcher took charge, guiding Hannah through labor with calm efficiency. Nathan stayed by Hannah's side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement even when he felt like his own heart might stop from fear. Hannah was incredibly strong, bearing the pain with gritted teeth and determination. But as the hours wore on and the contractions intensified, Nathan could see her flagging. "I cannot do this," Hannah gasped at one point, tears streaming down her face. "It hurts too much." "Yes, you can," Nathan said, squeezing her hand. "You are the strongest person I know, Hannah. You can do this." "He is right," Mrs. Fletcher added. "You are doing beautifully, dear, not much longer now." It was just past dawn when their baby finally entered the world with a lusty cry. Mrs. Fletcher worked quickly, cutting the cord and cleaning the infant while Nathan supported Hannah, who was crying with relief and exhaustion. "It is a boy," Mrs. Fletcher announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket. "A big, healthy boy." She placed the baby in Hannah's arms, and Nathan got his first real look at his son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably be blue. His little face was scrunched up, and he was making small, snuffling sounds. "He is perfect," Hannah whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. "He is," Nathan agreed, his voice rough with emotion. He reached out with one large finger, and the baby's hand wrapped around it instinctively. Something in Nathan's chest cracked open, flooding with love so intense it was almost painful. "What should we name him?" Hannah asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Nathan said, "What about Samuel? Not after Greer," he added quickly when Hannah tensed. "But because it means God has heard. We prayed for this child, for this life together." God heard us. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. Samuel Eastwood. I love it. Little Samuel Eastwood made his presence known from the very beginning. He had powerful lungs and was not afraid to use them when he was hungry or needed changing. Nathan, who had faced down bears and blizzards without flinching, found himself terrified of this tiny human who could fit in his 2 hands. "What if I drop him?" Nathan asked nervously the first time Hannah tried to get him to hold the baby alone. "You will not drop him," Hannah said patiently. "Just support his head and hold him close to your body." Nathan followed her instructions carefully, and Samuel settled against his chest with a small sigh. Looking down at his son, Nathan felt that overwhelming love again. "Hey there, little man," he whispered. "I am your father, and I am going to do my best by you." Mrs. Fletcher stayed for another 2 weeks to make sure both Hannah and the baby were doing well. She taught them how to care for Samuel, how to tell if he was eating enough, how to deal with common infant issues. By the time she left, Nathan and Hannah felt reasonably confident in their new roles as parents. The cabin, which had felt spacious for 2, now felt cozy for 3. Nathan added a window to let in more light and built more shelves for baby supplies. Hannah would sit in the rocking chair Nathan had made, nursing Samuel and singing lullabies. Nathan would come in from his work to find them like that, and his heart would swell with gratitude for this life he had never expected to have. Samuel grew quickly, as healthy babies do. By 6 months, he was sitting up and babbling. By a year, he was walking and getting into everything. Nathan baby proofed the cabin as much as possible, but Samuel seemed determined to find new ways to scare his parents. "He is fearless," Hannah said one day after rescuing Samuel from climbing the woodpile. "I wonder where he gets that from." Nathan, who had just pulled Samuel away from the fireplace for the 3rd time that morning, grinned. "Cannot imagine." Life fell into a new rhythm, centered around Samuel's needs and the changing seasons. Hannah postponed her teaching plans, deciding to wait until Samuel was older. Nathan adjusted his work schedule to spend more time at home, not wanting to miss any of his son's milestones. When Samuel was 2 years old, Hannah discovered she was pregnant again. This time, Nathan was less terrified and more excited. They knew what to expect now, and they were ready to expand their family. Their second child, a daughter they named Emma Rose, arrived on a snowy January day. She was smaller and quieter than Samuel had been, with Hannah's hazel eyes and Nathan's dark hair. Samuel was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. "Gentle," Nathan would remind him as Samuel tried to pet Emma's head with his chubby toddler hands. "She is very small." "Tiny," Samuel would agree solemnly, then go back to staring at her in wonder. With 2 children, the cabin felt truly full. Nathan began planning an addition, a second room that could serve as a bedroom for the children as they got older. But that was a project for spring. For now, they made do with the space they had. Emma slept in the cradle Nathan had built for Samuel, which had been stored in the loft for the past year. Samuel had graduated to a small bed that Nathan built specially for him. At night, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Hannah would sit by the fire, treasuring these quiet moments together. "Are you happy?" Nathan asked one night as they sat curled together. Hannah looked at him in surprise. "How can you even ask that? I have never been happier." "I just want to make sure," Nathan said. "Your life is so different from what it might have been. Sometimes I worry that you regret choosing this." "Nathan Eastwood, look at me," Hannah said firmly. When he met her eyes, she continued, "If I had married Samuel Greer, I would probably be dead by now. If I had stayed with my uncle, I would have been miserable and alone. Instead, I have a husband who loves me, 2 beautiful children, and a home where I feel safe and valued. How could I possibly regret any of that? When you put it that way, Nathan said, a smile tugging at his lips. I do not just like this life, Nathan. I love it. I love you. I love our children. I love waking up in this cabin every morning and knowing that this is where I belong. She kissed him softly. You saved me in more ways than one. You gave me a future I never dreamed possible. Nathan pulled her close, overwhelmed by gratitude for the woman who had stumbled into his life 4 years ago, frightened and alone. You saved me too, he said. I did not even realize I was lost until you found me. Years passed in a blur of seasons and milestones. Samuel grew into a sturdy boy with his father's love of the outdoors. Nathan taught him to track and hunt, to read the weather and respect the wilderness. Emma turned out to have her mother's love of learning and would spend hours looking at books, making up stories about the pictures. When Samuel was 6 and Emma was 4, Hannah finally started her teaching venture. Families in the area had heard about her education and began asking if she would teach their children. Hannah set up a small schoolroom in the addition Nathan had built, and 3 times a week, children would come to the cabin for lessons. Nathan would watch Hannah with her students, seeing her come alive in a way that was different from motherhood but equally beautiful. She was a gifted teacher, patient and creative, making learning an adventure. The children adored her, and their parents were grateful for the education their children received. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters when supplies ran low, summers when the heat made everyone irritable, illnesses that scared them both. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. When Samuel was 8, a man rode up to the cabin on a fine horse. Nathan saw him coming from a distance and felt his muscles tense with old instincts. Hannah came to stand beside him, shading her eyes against the sun. "Who is that?" she asked. "I do not know, but stay inside with the children until I find out." The man dismounted as Nathan approached, and Nathan could see he was well dressed with the look of someone from the city. His heart sank as recognition flickered. "Can I help you?" Nathan asked, his voice cool. "I am looking for Hannah Anderson," the man said. "I was told she might be found here." "Who is asking?" "My name is Richard Anderson. I am her uncle." Nathan felt rage rise in his chest, hot and immediate. "I know who you are, and you need to leave. Now." Richard held up his hands. "Please, I just want to talk to her. I have traveled a long way." "I do not care if you traveled from the moon," Nathan said, stepping forward. His size and obvious strength made Richard take a step back. "You have no business here." "Nathan." Hannah's voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing in the doorway, her face pale. "It is all right. Let him speak." "Hannah, you do not have to do this." "I know," she said, coming to stand beside him. She looked at her uncle, and Nathan could see her gathering her courage. "Why are you here, Uncle Richard?" Richard looked older than Nathan expected, grayer and more worn. "I came to apologize," he said, "and to see that you are well." "Apologize?" Hannah's voice was sharp. "After 6 years, you come here to apologize." "I know it is too little, too late," Richard said, "but I need you to hear it. After you left, Samuel Greer was furious. He made my life hell for months, ruining my business relationships, spreading rumors. I lost almost everything." "Good," Hannah said coldly. "It was good," Richard agreed, surprising them both, "because it made me realize what I had done. I had tried to sell you to a monster to advance my own interests. I was so focused on wealth and status that I forgot what really mattered. I am sorry, Hannah. I am so deeply sorry." Hannah stared at him for a long moment. Nathan stood ready to step in if she needed him, but she seemed steady. "I appreciate your apology," Hannah said finally, "but it does not change anything. You hurt me, Uncle Richard. You tried to force me into a nightmare. I had to run away and risk my life to escape the future you planned for me." "I know," Richard said, his voice breaking, "and I will regret it for the rest of my days. I am not here to ask for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry and that I am glad you found a better life." He looked at Nathan, then back at Hannah. "This is what you deserved all along. A man who looks at you with love, a home built on respect and partnership. I can see you are happy here, and that brings me more peace than I deserve." Hannah's expression softened slightly. "What happened to Samuel Greer?" "He married another young woman about a year after you left. She lasted 3 months before her brothers came and took her away. They made sure everyone knew what he had done to her. He left Virginia City in disgrace. Last I heard, he was in California, but no one really knows." "Good riddance," Nathan muttered. Richard nodded. "I should go. I just needed to see you one last time to tell you I was sorry." He mounted his horse, then paused. "For what it is worth, Hannah, your parents would be proud of the woman you have become. And they would be grateful to you, Mr. Eastwood, for giving their daughter the life she deserves." He rode away, and Hannah and Nathan watched until he disappeared into the trees. "Are you all right?" Nathan asked, wrapping his arm around Hannah's shoulders. "I think so," Hannah said. "I did not expect to ever see him again." "Do you think he meant it?" "The apology, I think he did," Hannah said, "but it does not matter. That part of my life is over. This is my life now, and I would not trade it for anything." Nathan pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "Come on, let us go back to our children and forget about the past." They walked back to the cabin together, leaving the past behind where it belonged. More years passed, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with a gift for tracking and wilderness skills. He talked about becoming a scout or maybe a ranger, wanting to explore the territories beyond Montana. Emma proved to be a brilliant student, devouring every book she could get her hands on. Hannah taught her everything she knew and then began ordering more advanced books from back east. Emma talked about becoming a teacher like her mother, or maybe even a doctor, though that would require education they could not provide in the mountains. Nathan and Hannah had 2 more children, another son named Jacob and a daughter named Lily. The cabin had grown over the years, with multiple rooms and a proper loft. It was no longer the simple one-room structure Nathan had built for himself. It was a family home, filled with love and laughter and life. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Hannah on a trip, just the 2 of them. Samuel was old enough to watch his younger siblings for a few days, and Nathan wanted to do something special. He took her to a beautiful spot high in the mountains, a meadow filled with wildflowers and surrounded by towering peaks. They camped there for 3 days, talking and laughing and remembering the journey that had brought them to this point. "You remember the night we met?" Nathan asked as they lay under the stars. "Of course," Hannah said, snuggling closer to him. "I was terrified and desperate, sleeping under a stranger's wagon in a rainstorm." "I thought you were going to hit me when I woke you up," Nathan said with a chuckle. "I almost did," Hannah admitted. "I did not know what to expect. For all I knew, you could have been worse than Samuel Greer. But I was not. No, you were my guardian angel. You offered me shelter and safety without asking for anything in return. You gave me a chance to breathe and figure out what I wanted." She propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "You saved my life, Nathan." "And you saved mine," Nathan said, reaching up to cup her face. "I was existing before you came along, but I was not living. You taught me what it means to truly be alive." They made love under the stars, with the same passion and tenderness that had marked their relationship from the beginning. Afterward, they lay tangled together, listening to the sounds of the wilderness around them. "Thank you," Hannah whispered. "For what?" "For everything. For finding me, for loving me, for building this life with me, for being exactly the man I needed." Nathan kissed her softly. "Thank you for choosing me, for seeing past my rough edges to the man underneath, for making me want to be better. You were always good, Nathan. I just helped you see it." They returned home 3 days later to find that Samuel had managed everything perfectly. The children were all healthy and happy, and the cabin was still standing. Nathan felt a swell of pride in his eldest son, who was becoming a capable and responsible young man. Life continued its steady march forward. Samuel, at 18, announced his intention to become a territorial scout. Nathan supported his decision, though it was hard to watch his son leave home. Emma, at 16, received a scholarship to attend a teaching college back east. Hannah cried for a week before Emma left, but she was also fiercely proud. "Our children are making their way in the world," Nathan said one night as he and Hannah sat alone in the cabin, Jacob and Lily already asleep. "I know," Hannah said. "It is what we raised them to do. But I miss them already." "So do I," Nathan admitted. "But they will come back. This will always be their home." And they did come back, regularly at first and then less frequently as they built their own lives. Samuel married a woman he met during his travels, a sheriff's daughter with a quick smile and a love of adventure. Emma sent letters full of stories about her studies and the people she met. Jacob and Lily grew up in a quieter household, with more of their parents' attention. Jacob turned out to have a gift for carpentry and worked alongside Nathan building furniture and structures. Lily loved animals and spent her time caring for the horses and chickens, talking about becoming a veterinarian one day. As Nathan and Hannah grew older, they found themselves grateful for the life they had built. They had raised 4 strong, capable children. They had created a home that was a sanctuary. They had loved each other through good times and hard times, and that love had only deepened with the years. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children all came home for a celebration. Samuel brought his wife and their 3 children, giving Nathan and Hannah a house full of grandchildren for the week. Emma came with her husband, a fellow teacher, and their 2 daughters. Jacob was courting a girl from Jamestown and brought her to meet the family. Lily, still unmarried at 22, was perfectly content helping wrangle her nieces and nephews. The cabin was full to bursting, and Nathan loved every chaotic minute of it. He watched Hannah surrounded by their children and grandchildren, her face alight with joy, and felt his heart overflow with gratitude. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Nathan and Hannah slipped outside to sit on the porch they had added years ago. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the air was cool and sweet. "Quite a family we have made," Nathan said, taking Hannah's hand. "Yes, we have," Hannah agreed. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it. That scared girl sleeping under your wagon grew up to have all this." "She was always this strong," Nathan said. "She just needed a safe place to let that strength show." "And you gave me that," Hannah said. She leaned her head on his shoulder and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. "You ever think about what might have been?" Nathan asked. "If I had not found you that day, if the rain had not been coming, sometimes," Hannah admitted. "But then I remember that we were meant to find each other. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was God, maybe it was just incredible luck. But somehow, in that vast wilderness, we found each other at exactly the right moment, and everything that has happened since has been a gift." Nathan wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I used to think I was meant to be alone. That solitude was my destiny. But you showed me that I was just waiting for you. And I was running, not knowing that I was running toward you the whole time," Hannah said. "Toward home." They sat there for hours, watching the stars and holding each other. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life together that was richer than either could have imagined. As Nathan helped Hannah back inside later that night, he thought about the young man he had been 30 years ago. Alone in his cabin, convinced he needed no one. How empty his life had been, even if he had not realized it at the time. And he thought about Hannah, desperate and frightened, sleeping under his wagon with nowhere else to go. How brave she had been, how determined to choose her own path even when it meant risking everything. They had saved each other that rainy night in the Montana wilderness. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful. A family, a home, a love that would last generations. Nathan Eastwood had offered shelter from a storm, never imagining that the woman he found would become his everything. Hannah Anderson had accepted that shelter, never dreaming that the mountain man who offered it would become her safe haven, her partner, her forever love. Together, they had built a life that was simple in its means but rich beyond measure in everything that truly mattered. And as they lay down to sleep that night, surrounded by the evidence of the love they had nurtured and the family they had created, they both knew that they would not change a single moment of the journey that had brought them here. The rain that had threatened that long-ago evening had brought more than just a storm. It had brought two souls together, and from that meeting an entire world had bloomed. A world full of love, laughter, tears, and joy. A world where a mountain man and the woman who had slept under his wagon had found forever in each other's arms. And in the quiet darkness of the cabin, as Nathan held Hannah close and listened to her steady breathing, he whispered the same prayer of gratitude he had whispered every night for 30 years. Thank you for her. Thank you for this life. Thank you for everything. The mountains stood silent and eternal around them, keeping watch over the little cabin where a family slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved, they were together, and they were home.